role's technology development manager is to maintain or manage our portfolio of NIA innovation projects for the distribution network. So that's quickly covered off. As I go through the presentation, I'll touch on a few other points. I'm proud to say that I was on the forerunner to the Power Academy, so you can decide if it's a success or a failure in 15-20 minutes time. I'll start off with an apology or two on my title of this presentation, Integrating LiDAR Technology into Business as Usual and Gaining Business Buy-in and Support. That's the last time, this slide's the last time I'm going to mention LiDAR. LiDAR is actually just the technology that we use to populate the virtual world that James has touched on this morning. The virtual world is the innovation rather than the LiDAR technology, so after this slide, LiDAR will sort of be jettisoned to the virtual world. The other thing I'm going to apologise for this title is I should have included, like all good stories, it's going to be a story of how we adopted this into business, or we are adopting this technology into business as usual. This is the first part of a trilogy of presentations, so I should have put part one. So, as I said, I'm going to tell a story, and the story is about how Scottish Power Energy Networks have embraced the virtual world asset management technology that we've seen, and we're now going on a journey to adopting it as business as usual for some of our overhead line asset management. So, everyone's been doing a bit of a show of hands recently for the session, so just a quick show of hands. Who had actually heard of Fugro 6 months ago? So, about a quarter of the room, I think. I was not in that. So, not so long ago, in a hotel just down the road, Scottish Power met Fugro back in September, and we had some initial discussions and introductions to their products. Fugro explained to us their innovative LiDAR capture and processing techniques that are deployed in Australia, the concept of a virtual world asset management solution, the roads product that has evolved from that, and the rollout in Australia, and the benefits that the virtual world asset management has achieved, particularly for overhead line asset management programs and vegetation management programs, which is close to the hearts of all DNOs. They also give us an idea of the roadmap of their roads product, and we discussed the potential for UK trials. Now, this left us with a very good impression of the product. You know, we thought, this is great, this is wonderful, this is the future. Is it really going to be able to replace what we do at the moment? Now, the current processes we use for asset management of overhead line assets are manual inspections. They are tried, they are tested, we trust them, they are known. They are getting incrementally better through the use of handheld technology, like SSE was shown this morning. But essentially, they are going to get to the point where they're not going to get any much better, and they're not going to get any cheaper, and they're not going to get faster. And as a result of that, the frequency is going to remain the same, if not go out further. So we can see the benefits of going to this virtual world asset management technique, but we have to be certain that it's going to be better than what we currently do. And we left that meeting thinking, this is great, but we can't see it beating what we currently do. And we had 3 initial questions that needed to be addressed before we could think about adopting this sort of technology. And it was, could the ROAM's virtual world asset management package deliver what it says it can do, and for the UK distribution network? So we saw a lot of Australian examples. Australian infrastructure is different. Some of the bush poles in particular were intriguing, and you know, did it relate to a wood pole in Aberystwyth? You know, these are the sort of questions we had. The product that we were pitching, it was very aggressive timelines from flying the network with a fixed-wing aircraft to giving us the virtual world model. It was very fast, very quick turnaround. In the past, when we've had anything to do with LiDAR data, it's been very time-consuming and labour-intensive. So the idea of something being turned around in a matter of days or weeks and having this was, you know, we were sceptics to say the least. And we also thought, is this going to capture all our network? Is it going to tell us if there are any issues? You know, or is it going to have any erroneous data? The second point was, is there a business case for this? I touched on just then that we know the business case for doing manual inspections of our overhead lines right now. We know how much it costs, we know how quickly we can do them, we've got a program in place, we know what we're likely to find. We didn't know the full costs of doing this sort of technique. We had an idea what the cost would be, we didn't know what the results, how the results would vary, we didn't know what the reductions would be. It's the potential reductions to our vegetation management and other headline programs would be. So there's a question there. And the third point was, how would it integrate into existing DNO systems? So most DNOs will have things like a GIS package, a SAP system, or a vegetation management database. So if we did have this virtual world asset management system, how would it integrate with all these things? How would we make sure that the data is stored and placed in the right place, doesn't step on the toes of existing systems, doesn't complicate things for our staff? So there were three sort of questions that we had, and after a short period of deliberation on this, we decided that, yeah, we'd like to push ahead with a trial, and I think we decided to utilise the outgoing innovation funding initiative from DPCR5, so just at the tail end of DPCR5, to do a proof of concept trial, or as I refer to it as a run seal test, to see if it, does it do what it says it does on the tin. So there's the proof in the pudding, a nice lovely picture of a snapshot of the virtual world asset management system around one of our substations in North Wales. So we undertook this IFI proof of concept project, and we also undertook an initial cost benefit analysis. It was a 180k IFI project, delivered just recently, in April 15, and it involved 2 separate flights of the peninsula in North Wales. So this is just the outcrop beneath Anglesey. We also did, as I say, some initial cost benefit analysis to understand the potential impact and some assumed reductions it could have on our ED1 vegetation and ESQCR programs for overhead lines. So the outcomes for this, we got a lot of confidence in the software and the service that Food provided. The results were the model was turned around as expected. It passed the non-seal test, I suppose, is the short answer. They did what they said they were going to do. For engineering in the power industry, this was as sexy as it gets for our guys. They all loved it, but everyone who liked it didn't. They sort of almost brushed it off until we showed them some high-level CBA results. And when we showed the guys in the business that actually there might be some significant ED1 benefits in this, then all of a sudden we got the eyes and ears of some of the senior management, and that led to a business pull for a larger pilot project to quantify performance and benefits. So it's been a project that's going to feed into a larger project, but the reason for this being is that the volume of the work that's required. We talked this morning, risk was mentioned. There's a huge risk that if we were to go for this straight away, all in, that there's a lot of unknowns yet. So this project is to try and, for the UK DNOs, to try and manage the risk, identify and de-risk the project all the way along, and basically deliver this into business as usual, should the business case stack up. So I said we had buy-in. What certainly helped us for the business buy-in was the cherry on top sort of scenario that came up a couple of weeks ago, where this screenshot of the virtual world asset management suggested to us how well you can all see at the back of the room. But there are 3 conductors there at 11 kV, and they should all be about the same height. One of them is obviously not, and the database that goes, or the spreadsheet that goes hand in hand with this system highlighted to us that something's not quite right here. The attachment height of these 3 conductors is not the same. You might have something untoward there. So it suggested that the conductor slipped off the crossarm. And we showed a few people who went, no, it would be daft. I think we would have spotted that a long time ago. Yeah, we haven't. So a bit embarrassing, but from someone who's trying to push this project into the business, it was a back of the net sort of moment. So that's now been rectified and chalked up for the project that we've got a success there. So it just shows, that if there was any naysayers, that this was one of the very useful things to put into their arguments. So I said this is the start of our larger project. We've now registered under LA, which is the Virtual World Asset Management Project. The scope and objectives are as follows. So it's a £3.5 million project, 34 months. The principal objectives for the project will be to quantify the business benefits of E1 based on vegetation management and ESQCR programs. Assuming there is a positive CBA, we're going to facilitate the switch to this V1-based programs at the earliest opportunity in ED1, so that we can actually maximise the benefits received by ourselves and for the other DNOs. And also look at ways of integrating V1 into our existing corporate systems and policies. Secondary to that, we're going to look at maximising and quantifying the additional benefits that can be delivered through virtual world asset management. So we talked about vegetation management programs, we talked about ESQCR, so that's the electricity supply quality continuity regulations. What else can we utilise this data for? We've talked about when we're building and constructing new lines, how can that data be used? We've got through V1, we've got extra terrain data, we've got vegetation, we've got overhead line asset data. When we start talking about new proposed routes for overhead lines, we can actually look at them and plan them in a virtual world or export them into a modelling package. Regulatory reporting. One of the things we can quickly do is through the system we can actually give every span and every pole a sort of traffic light indication of its health based on its ground clearance, encroachment of vegetation, pole lead, variance in attachment heights. So there are lots of other potential avenues to explore where we'll be able to eke benefits from this system. We're also going to work with our staff and Fugro to identify future enhancements that would really add value to DNOs from virtual world asset management systems. And I've talked a lot about that the end of this story will be when this is in business as usual, assuming that this business case does stack up. One thing that our parent company, Iberdrola, is keen for us always today is there to be competition in the market for solutions. Now, we want to, the size of the project we're undertaking is about 5% of the UK's overhead line network. If there's a big carrot at the end of the day for companies or companies out there to deliver this sort of solution, we want to try and stimulate the market to encourage others to start looking in this area as well. So there's a bit of competition in the marketplace. So we'll at some point in the near future we'll look to bring other vendors up to speed with our requirements or what we think our requirements are going to be in ED1. The project itself is all registered now, it's on the ENA portal, there's a link at the end. But essentially we split the project into 6 work packages. I'm pleased to say that we've well underway with work package 1. One of the upsides of this glorious weather this week is that the scanning of North Wales district has begun, and I think it's almost a third complete. I should have pointed out earlier on, in the interest of keeping the slides down, that the actual project covers what we call our North Wales district and the Dumfries and Galloway district in Scotland. These are 2 of our new operational districts. They account to about 30% of our overhead line network in our networks, but about 5% of the UK's. They're very different networks in terms of how well they are managed in terms of vegetation. In the Scottish network, we run to a managed vegetation cycle. In North Wales, less so. So there are a lot of issues where we still have to have outages to cut the trees back for vegetation issues. So work package 1 is well underway. We're now well underway in formulating a plan for work package 2, and what we're looking to do with this is basically get the virtual world data in and align it to our own existing data sets for vegetation management and ESQCR, and actually see where there's alignments. We're not overly concerned, but where there is any discrepancies, where they're telling us different things, it's actually those sites that we're going to go and have a look at and quantify and actually identify which is right, our existing records, all the data we've got from the lighthouse surveys. Third work package will involve other DNOs is trying to come up with an architecture of how this data can come in, how it can be processed, how the data can be stored. And work package 4 is all about how we adopt this in business as usual, what policies we need to get in place, what we need to amend, what specification we need to go out to tender on. who we need to educate on this. There's a lot there about how our contracts will be written for these programmes going forward. Rather than giving contracts out on quota-based rate contracts, we'll be going to effective span-based contracts. There's a lot of work there still to be done. And obviously we'll look at how further we can enhance the product, not product, but virtual world asset management systems. And an obligation, obviously, this is a first real start of that process, is we, as an NIA project, we're expected to disseminate the learning for these projects, and happy to do so. So this is the first instance where we're talking about this project. There'll be many more. For those of you who will be attending this year's LC&I conference in Liverpool in November, we'll hopefully have a quite good presentation on this project and deliver some initial results. So that'll be part 2. Part 3 will be at the end of the project. So, so far so good. I haven't got a great deal more to say on this. My details will and information on the project can be found on the ENA portal. Or as I go back, I'm sure happy to take any questions you may have. Okay.